Welcome to Canada Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communications. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This conversation, taped on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for U.S. Senate, and we are joined by Republican candidate Kevin Wade. Kevin, thanks very much for joining us.
Tom, again, thanks.
We appreciate you having
for
here.
inviting me down.
And we'll start with the most basic of questions. This is your second go-around running for Senate. Why
Yes,
are you running for U.S. Senate?
I grew up on the harsher side of life in a factory town in Pennsylvania. I went to work in a steel mill 3 days after high school. When I wasn't in the mill, I went to school at night. I came to Delaware, had a great opportunity opened up to me with the DuPont company years ago. I continued to go to school, became an electrical engineer, started my own business at the age of 29. I'm married over 35 years now. I have had a wonderful life. I want to make sure that the next generation has that same pathway to opportunity and choice and prosperity that I've had. That's why I stand up.
What should voters know about your qualifications for Senate, perhaps maybe that they don't already know about?
I run a small specialty engineering business. I've worked with people around the country and around the world. I've had to sometimes drop in by helicopter, in fact, to do the work with my small team of engineers and programmers. I've learned to work with people from every possible background. I've worked in Santiago, Chile. I've worked in Amsterdam, Singapore, Jakarta, around the world. I find that we all share common interests, and if we can set a common goal, we can achieve a common good. Our country faces challenges now that, well, I have never seen in my lifetime. And it's time to think about all of us, we the people. That's the message I bring, that we can get together ourselves and overcome our differences, heal the bridges that have been knocked down by the partisanship in Washington, and truly get to work at solving the real bread and butter, everyday problems in the state.
And one of those everyday problems we've seen over the last few years is the unemployment rate, which in Delaware is still hovering just above 6%. If elected, how do you see finding ways to get more Delawareans back to work?
Well, the unemployment rate is artificially low. The unemployment rate measures those survivors who are still looking for work. So many have given up work. What's called the labor force participation rate, that percentage of adults who are actually working is at a 40 or 50-year low. It's terrible. I was reading just this morning that the home ownership by people under 30 is at the lowest level ever recorded. This economy is not good. In June, we had over 284,000 jobs created, as reported by the federal agencies. But 278,000, Tom, were part-time. People have full-time bills. They have a full-time life. You can't get by on a part-time job. We need to rationalize the tax code. We need to rein in the regulatory authorities who think that we exist for their amusement. We need fair and effective regulations to kind of level the playing field for people in this country, but the regulators have put up too many roadblocks to small businessmen who'd like to expand.
Let's talk a little bit about the budget and the national debt. As a U.S. Senator, what efforts would you make to try and address the budget and the debt?
Well, the first effort is to address the budget and the debt. We have $17 trillion in debt, and it's looming over us like an explosive cloud. I've emphasized, and I've been talking around the state about the penny plan. Before we address the problem, we need to understand the problem. And the problem has to be expressed in terms that everyday Delawareans can understand at home. I propose to cut federal spending by 1 penny for each dollar once a year and allow tax revenues to continue to increase. The penny plan, cut $1 in federal spending one time each year until after about 6-7 years, the budget comes into balance. And then we can go to work at the harder effort, the harder challenges of reducing that accumulated debt that's now $17 trillion.
You talked a little bit about it earlier, the partisanship in Washington. What can you do to help fix that partisan divide?
Be an independent voice for Delaware. Right now, we have a senator in place who votes with Harry Reid about 97% of the time. The last time I read the Constitution, the state of Delaware has 2 U.S. senators, not 1, and the state of Nevada has 2, not 3. I will be an independent voice for Delaware, and that independence will bring a common sense message to Washington. I don't care if it's from the left or from the right, from R's or D's. If there's a solution out there, let's get to work on using that solution to move this country forward.
Immigration, another big issue. What should Congress do about the growing immigration crisis, one that we've seen exacerbated recently by the influx of unaccompanied children coming into the United States from Central America.
I've lived and worked in northern Mexico. I've been on the edge of that desert. I can't imagine children walking across the northern deserts of Mexico. It's a harsh country. Those children, those teens making the journey up from Central America are marked by their clothing, their accent. People in Mexico know these are strangers, and they are prey to some of the most vicious human predators on the planet. I can't go in detail as to what happens to them, but tragedy happens to them on the way. They believe they've heard a promise out of Washington that things will be better if they can get across the Rio Grande, and that's a false promise. The first thing we do is stop deceiving people south of the border. The compassionate thing is to return these children home to their villages, to their families where people know their names. We need to secure the border, and then I will rely on the wisdom of the American people to decide what to do next after that border is clearly secured.
In recent months, we've seen fighting in Israel and Gaza, in Syria, in Iraq, Ukraine. Realizing that each of these conflicts have issues that are unique to each of them themselves, do you still see a general rule of thumb or criteria for what kind of involvement the U.S. should have in these type of conflicts overseas?
Well, just last week, a few days ago, I was surrounded by that fighting. I was on the Gaza frontier with IDF forces. I saw the shelling. I felt the explosions. I jumped into a pit when we had a warning of an inbound coming in. I broke bread with the IDF. I prayed the soldiers' prayer with them in a circle prior to their crossing the border and going to house combat. The problems in the Mideast have been with us a long time. What's new and different is we have a president of the United States who's created a vacuum of leadership. The United States is not the world's policeman, but we cannot simply run from the scene that requires leadership. We've left a vacuum, and you're seeing the swirl of incredible violence with ISIS through Syria and Iraq, and Hamas emboldened to fire now up to 9,000 rockets into Israel. It's a way of life that the Israeli people do not need to live, and I support Israel in their actions to defend their homes and their families.
And finally, education also an issue that's very close to many people. Common Core standards, where do you fall on their implementation and how we move forward with those?
I disagree with Common Core. There are some elements in Common Core that have some merit, but on balance, I disagree. It takes the hard-earned classroom experience of teachers across Delaware and throws it out and gives them a script to follow. You and I are receiving requests to approve tax rate increases on a regular basis because our public schools need more money, and yet the textbooks and the teaching materials of just a few years ago were all thrown away to be replaced by this great experiment called Common Core. My solution is more fundamental. I want to provide vouchers universally to parents in Delaware so that every parent can make their choice, because only the parent knows best what type of educational framework their children should be in. Universal vouchers for every single parent in Delaware with school-aged children. That's the answer.
Kevin Wade, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, we thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be with you.
Appreciate it. You can find all of our candidate conversations online at DelawarePublicMedia.org and DelawareDebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped here on the campus of Delaware State University. Delaware Debates 2014 is produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media's News Director, Tom Byrne. Thanks so much for watching.